How's it going, YouTube? Tyler Polaris here, guys. Going to be making a video on reclassing at Fort Eustis. So many of you are probably like me. You went to Fort Eustis to reclass and didn't really know really what you were getting yourself into. Maybe you had a couple people in your unit who had some really old information, or um, the information from the other side of Fort Eustis, which is AIT land. So I wanted to make a video here to give you guys all the information that you should need. Um, Granted, now some of this could have changed. I reclassed from February 2019 to June 2019 to a 15 Tango. So some of it could be a little different, but a lot of the information that I give you could also change due to the cadre. And that's something that I'm going to go into detail here later. But overall, here you go. So first off, your daily schedule. While I was there, you had to be in formation, ready to go by 06, Monday through Friday for PT. They have you, there's like in the CQ building, while you're there, you got to be there basically by 0550, and you play the game, the 10 minutes early. You go out to PT. PT lasts anywhere from zonk to the worst I ever did was like an hour and a half, but usually it's about 45 minutes to an hour. The PT for the most part is, well, let me get into that. So your PT is dependent a lot on your cadre. The first 3/4 of the time I was there, the cadre we had were super laid back. They had been there for a few years, so you'll notice that you'll have drill sergeants that are they don't want to be there, and your platoon sergeants don't want to be there. And so basically with your cadre, when they get there, we had to change a cadre about 3/4 through, and it sucked. It basically made the rest of my time there super, super shitty. The new cadre changed all the rules and were super strict and stuff like that. So your cadre can really make or break your experience there. But the cadre, as they are there longer, they get lazier, I guess let's call it. So my cadre that I had originally were super lazy, and we did PT. Really only did real PT maybe maybe 2 days a week. But usually your PT consists of run days are Monday, Wednesday, and I guess I don't really want to call it muscle failure, but usually you do other type of exercises on Tuesday. And then usually Thursday is usually a sports day. So it's ultimate frisbee, stuff like that. And then Friday is usually you go to Yorktown. Sorry, I was going to say Norfolk, but I know it wasn't Norfolk. You go to the Yorktown Beach. We did that almost every Friday I was there that we did PT. It started off as, with the first cadre, it was like a hangover walk. We'd always get tore up on Thursday nights and, go walk it off in the morning. And then the cadre changed and it turned into hill sprints and a bunch of other bullshit. So they really made PT suck even more. PT test. So the PT tests are done every Tuesday. You're supposed to take a PT test the first, your first week that you're there. I didn't take my first PT test until week 4 or 5. And then you are required. So everybody stresses about the PT test because it's a real unclear of if you have to pass it, if you don't have to pass it to graduate. So my recommendation is just pass it, obviously. But the PT test, basically, if you do not pass the PT test, you are going to retake the PT test every week until you pass. And then once you pass, you're going to take one they say about 4 to 5 weeks out from graduation. So you have to do another PT test for record. So you have to have one PT test passing, whether you pass the first time, second, third time, you have to do that. And then you're going to take one the third, about 4 to 5 weeks out before you graduate. And that's going to be your final PT test that goes on your 1059. So you do have to pass a PT test if you are active duty. I know that if you do not pass a PT test, if you're active duty, um, you cannot graduate. But I know for National Guard, we had numerous people that never passed PT and didn't give a flying fuck, and they still graduated. And there actually is a regulation currently still in place that you can graduate. So you're not required if you are National Guard. Reserves, I don't know how that falls, but that's that. Um, you are going to have student leadership. So remind you, everybody there's a few E3s, but usually everybody there is an E4. You have a few then you have about maybe 20% of the people are E5s, and then you have a couple E6s. Um, basically, how they do it is basically it goes off rank while I was there. But usually they pick people, the other 15 series, like it's like the hotels and the other ones, like the power plant, the prop and rotor, all those people that are there for like 6 months, they usually make them do student leadership right when they get there. And they will hold that position until they graduate. And then they'll just bring whoever is coming in next week, usually will fill that role. Usually that's how it works. That can be subject to change, but it works the same way. You have a student first sergeant, um, and then you have, squad leaders, and then it depends on how many platoons. When I was there, we started with one big ass platoon, and then they broke it down right when I left into two platoons, and it was a shit show. So I'm sure it's still a mess because it always was. But that's student leadership. Also, you have three. So the schoolhouse goes 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. So you have three shifts. You have day shift, which is, I think school starts like 09 to 1700. Then you got swings, which is 1700 to 2 a.m. And then you've got overnights, which I think is 2 a.m. to 9 a.m. I think something like that. So the schoolhouse does go 24 hours. So if you are a reclass on either swing shift or night shift, you will do your PT at, I think it's like 09:30 in the morning. If you were on days, you'll do your PT from 06 to like 07. So there is three shifts you can be on. The majority of people, I would say, are on days. Days has, I think our platoon had like 180 or some shit like that, or our day shift, and then night shift was around 100. So there's a lot of people there. For your living accommodations, you are going to live. You're going to have your own room, and you're going to share like a kitchen and a bathroom with somebody else who's also going to have their own room. So think of like a like a duplex kind of room, kitchen, their room, and then you've got like a little hallway with a bathroom and all that shit. So you are going to have your own room. The air conditioning and the heating sucks. I was fortunate to have an air conditioner that never turned off in the summer. So my room would actually be freezing, which was better than most people that didn't even have AC. So that really sucked for them. The heat in the winter, I got there right at the end of winter, and my room always stayed warm. I didn't have an issue with any heat. I don't think very many people had issue with heat. It was AC not working. So that's that. You are going to have CQ. So you're going to have CQ. It depends how they do it, but usually it goes off last name. So you have CQ for like your shift. So for days, for example, have CQ starts, I think, at like 6 p.m. and it goes till 6 a.m. and they're in 2-hour shifts, and there's two of you. So and it goes off last name is how they did it when I did it. So it'd start A and go to Z and then repeat. And I had CQ for that about every other week, when we were down to not very many people. But then when I left, the numbers popped up and I was going to every 3 weeks. Funny thing about that shit, they actually had me on the CQ roster 3 weeks after I left Fort Eustis, and I got a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, you're supposed to be at CQ. And I was like, bro, I fucking graduated 3 fucking weeks ago. So, leads me back to my point. Student leadership is a fucking mess, and shit is always fucked up. So be prepared for that. With also CQ, you are going to have weekend CQ. Randomly, I had one weekend CQ shift the whole time I was there. It's kind of just picked randomly. I don't know how they pick it, but usually a lot of the time they start making weekend CQ. They pick it off people who fuck ups, people who don't show up to formation, people that miss PT, stuff like that. So most of your CQ shifts on the weekend are covered by people that fuck up. Sometimes you still get fucked over because people don't fuck up, but it is what it is. I got really lucky. We had a 4-day weekend, and I had CQ, and because I didn't do a 4-day pass, which I'll talk about next. I did not have a 4-day pass, so I had to do CQ. Well, somebody fucked up the day before I had CQ, or 2 days before, something like that, and so I didn't have CQ. So if you don't fuck up, your odds of getting weekend CQ, you might get 1, maybe 2 shifts, but usually people mess it up. Let's talk about passes. So you're gonna have to put in a pass for any 4-day weekend and stuff. You're not allowed to go outside, I think, like 250 miles or some shit. During the week and on the weekends, you're not supposed to go outside like 50 miles, and they give you the okay to go to Virginia Beach and Busch Gardens and all that stuff. So, like, nobody really follows the rules on the weekends. Like, people just go off, but sometimes, like, when I was there, we had like a recall formation because somebody got in trouble, like bad trouble, and we had to do a recall formation, and there was some people that were like so far away, like somebody went home to like Maine or some shit. So they got in some good trouble when they got back. That's something that, you're taking a gamble with that type of stuff. I never went outside where I wasn't supposed to because I heard stories of people getting screwed over, and I just wanted to do my time there and be done. So I just, my wife flew out numerous times, and we hung out between Norfolk and Newport News and whatever other shitholes are there. So that was that. Your weekends. So going off 4 days, your weekends are basically your time. Basically, the day is your time. And what I mean by that is when you're done with PT for the day, you have one formation to check in, and then you're done until the next day at PT. So that's how it was the whole time I was there. I know prior to me getting there, they had some issues where people did some really stupid shit and fucked it up for the whole company. And people got in trouble, and they made it for like 3-4 formations a day on the weekends and really ruined everybody's shit there. And a lot of people left and all types of shit. And apparently how it got fixed was the sergeant major came by on a Sunday and saw all of hotel company out there doing bullshit. And he was like, what the fuck's going on? So that misery can really be determined by your first sergeant. But try your best to not get in trouble. But other than that, your weekends are yours. Drinking. So when I was leaving Fort Eustis, the cadre and stuff, they were trying to get it pushed to where hotel company could drink in the barracks. And what was happening, the reason behind that was because Fort Eustis is under control of Army MPs, Air Force MPs, and like civilian DOD MPs, whatever you want to call them. So it creates a lot of law issue and a lot of problems because Fort Eustis is technically owned by the Air Force, but it's an Army base, but it's also an Air Force base because it's joint base with Langley. So there's a lot of gray area, and a lot of people like myself. There's a big parking lot across the street from all the barracks, and everybody goes over there and drinks and stuff because you're off hotel company grounds. So that's where we were all drinking. Well, I'm talking like 2-3 months. We were getting harassed so bad, and like we weren't doing shit wrong. The MPs were just being dicks, and it got to the point where one of our drill sergeants, I'm not gonna say they did, but they may or may not have come over and had some fun with us and associated, and kept an eye on stuff. Let's go with that. But there was an incident where a drill sergeant may or may not have went hands-on with an MP and told this private MP some words, and the private got offended, and the drill sergeant and the private might have been, the private might have got the shit kicked out of him. Well, after that, they allowed us to start drinking. There's like these big, like, you know, grilling gazebos and stuff in like the middle of hotel company. There's like a bunch of buildings. Think of like a big U, kind of like a U, and there's a bunch of buildings, um, like a big U, and then there's like a gazebo and shit in the middle. And then there's a bunch of buildings like that are also hotel companies. So it's kind of, there's two main compounds, buildings, think 699 and 698 are the two hotel company buildings. There's also Permanent Party there and all this stuff. Well, anyways, after that incident, Cadre allowed, they immediately changed it to where we could drink on hotel company grounds, not in the rooms, but on the grounds. And the MPs left us the fuck alone for the rest of the time I was there. So that was that that was a good experience for that one, witnessing all that shit. Um, DFAC sucks ass. Straight up, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. The only meal that's semi decent is breakfast. Other than that, most people buy food and cook in their rooms. You don't really have like a stove, but some people get toasters and little hot plates, which are totally not allowed, but people do it anyways because the DFAC is so terrible. The DFAC over there's two DFACs. There's one by hotel company and all the Permanent Party there. It's a small one, and then there's one over by the schoolhouses and where all like the AIT barracks are. And that one's actually better, but you're gonna deal with AIT kids. Um, the DFAC, you are allowed as hotel company to just cut the line for all these AIT kids, especially because every other weekend they come to our DFAC. So if you eat there on the weekends, and the drill sergeants are there with the kids, as they're called, and you basically, the drill sergeants just let you go around and they're super chill about it. Never had any issues, but the food does suck, like horrible. So plan on not eating at the DFAC very much. There is a bowling alley on post that has a bar and all that stuff. You can drink there, and they actually have really good food and it's cheap. That's where we spend a lot of time. But last two things I want to talk about. First off, if you have the means to take a vehicle, like take your car or you get a rental car or whatever, I would highly recommend it. Because there's a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of stuff to do in Norfolk. There's a lot of stuff to do towards Richmond and stuff like that. So there is a lot of stuff around to do, and it can keep you occupied for about 3 or 4 months on the weekends. Also, because the Wi-Fi in the rooms, I forgot to talk about this earlier, the Wi-Fi is shit. And I got told this from like everybody in my unit when I was going to reclass. They were like, the Wi-Fi is shit. And I kind of thought they were joking. And I mean, the Wi-Fi is shit. Like when it wants to work, it's great, but it never works properly. So like if you do any like online gaming and shit, you can, for the most part, you can forget about that. I mean, you have some nights where your internet's good, but most nights the internet is shit, like so bad to where me and my wife, we had to like talk on our phones. Like I had like an app on my phone. She'd be in the party chat, and I would use the app to talk from my phone because it was so fucked up. The internet is just annoyingly terrible, and it's expensive. It's like $60 a month, and it's shit. So that is really frustrating. Um, Schoolhouse. Last thing I want to talk about is the schoolhouse. Um, so schoolhouse is pretty basic. Like I said earlier, there's 3 shifts. A lot of your experience in the schoolhouse can be determined by your instructors. Usually green suitor instructors are a lot cooler, which green suitors are guys like, you know, staff sergeants, stuff like that, who are in the Army. They're usually a lot better than the civilians. Your civilian instructors are afraid of getting fired and all this shit. And if you're hotel company in the schoolhouse, you have a lot more freedom. Well, let me take that back. You have no fucking freedom. I got bitched at like my first week there because, you know, I carry a Gerber like a lot of people in the Army do. Well, I carry a Gerber and a pocket knife like everybody does. And I got my ass reamed by some sergeant first class. I was at parade rest. Okay, so when you go to hotel company and you go reclass, you're in trade off, so you got to be real like on your customs and courtesies and all that shit. They're like, they will fucking rape you if you do not abide by that and stuff like that. So definitely, if you're like National Guard like me, you know, it's real chill, lax and stuff like that. You know, in aviation, it's real like first name basis. Where you go to that shit and you're like, holy shit, like parade rest and all this stuff. So definitely, that's a big thing. But my story, real quick, I was taking a piss. And the sergeant first class, I don't remember his name. He was an older dude. And I'm taking a piss, and this dude behind me, he's like standing in line behind me to take a piss because there's not enough toilets in the fucking schoolhouse. and he says to me, "You're not allowed." He said, "Are you an AIT?" And I said, "No, I'm reclassing." And he's like, "Well, that means you're an AIT." And I was like, "Okay, well, whatever. Like, okay, cool. It's starting first class. Hoo hoo." And now let me remind you, I just put my dick away and I turned around. This dude has me at parade rest talking to me, not saying relax or anything. I'm at parade rest talking to the sergeant first class. Long story short, he's sitting there talking to me for 2 minutes about how I am not allowed to carry a Gerber or a pocket knife in the schoolhouse because it could be because then initial AIT kids might think that that's okay for them to do, and they could get hurt using my knife and my Gerber and all this shit. Like, it just went on this huge thing. Like, if he would have just said like it's a FOD issue, that would have been a great end of the discussion. But he turned it into like an encyclopedia. So be wary of that. Now, granted, though, my instructors didn't give a shit. Like, they didn't care. I had really cool instructors. Even my civilians were pretty cool for the most part. One civilian instructor I had was a fucking asshole. I'll never forget the guy. Great fucking instructor when he wanted to instruct, but definitely the biggest asshole I've ever met in my entire life, even to hotel company. He's like one of those dudes who would like treat you like shit and basically tell you how much of a piece of shit you were, and then you would retaliate, like calm the fuck down, dude. And he would be like, "Oh, you can't talk to me like that." He's one of those kinds. And unfortunately, in the schoolhouse, there is a lot of instructors like that. And it's usually the civilians are usually worse. However, there is a lot of green suiter instructors that are worse. So getting your instructors, as long as you get some that are good and some that are bad, that's usually how most classes are. And that's that. I do know that if you are on nights or swings as hotel company, usually your days are a lot shorter. Hotel company, we always got released early. Every class I know, hotel company got released early. My class, we usually got out. Hotels, we'd be gone an hour, 2, 3 hours early some days. Even on days, I was on days. And the AIT kids have to hang out. And like they can't go back to their barracks and stuff until you're in like the last 2 weeks, and then they can go off and clear post and shit like that. But if you're on nights or swings, your instructors usually you go home like stupid early. I mean, they don't want to be there. Another thing too is, so when I went, we had each class has 12 people in it. For 15 Tango, it's 12 people. And we had 4 reclasses in my class and then 8 AIT kids. And I had 6 of those AIT kids were female. So our class was very, it was fucking off. It was off the wall with stuff like that. It was just like the instructors would get so pissed because nothing against females, but we only had about 1 female in our class who actually like knew the basics of mechanics, and everybody else, I'm not kidding you, was like a prima donna, and our instructors went crazy. But for us, even hotels, we got to go home really early. The class after me was 11 hotel company guys, 1 AIT kid. The AIT kid failed out of the class, and it was just and then they brought in another person who failed, an AIT kid, and he failed out too. So they graduated just 11 hotels. When they had just all hotel company, those motherfuckers never went to fucking class. Like, they went for like 2 hours in the morning and they're fucking done. Like the last 6 weeks. So, like I said, a lot of that's luck of the draw with your instructors. Make sure I got everything here on my list. I think that's all I got for you guys. I think I covered everything major. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to ask. I will answer them, whatever your questions are. But overall, reclassing at Eustis, it wasn't bad. It only got really shitty when we and it. Well, let me rephrase that. It got shitty when we got new cadre for the PT and shit like that, but everything else kind of got better. So the way to look at it is, no matter kind of what happens, some shit gets better, some shit gets worse. It just kind of depends. And truthfully, just be prepared for the shit show. Be prepared for basic ass PT. I mean, we had some hard days, but it's basically, think of like a 9 to 5 job. That's the way to think of it. You know, you got to get up and do your PT and eat your breakfast. But then basically your workday is like 9 to 5, and Monday through Friday you get all your holidays and shit off from the schoolhouse, but you might get screwed by hotel company. Other than that, though, guys, I think that sums it up. Like I said, any questions, anything like that, don't hesitate to ask. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. And that's it. Have a good one. Thanks, guys.